In early October 2025, Russian President Vladimir Putin drew another line in the sand regarding the war in Ukraine. He announced that if the United States sends Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine, it will destroy any US-Russia relations made during the year. But it went much further than just a casual remark. Just a few days later, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko escalated the rhetoric, threatening nuclear war if Tomahawks reach Ukrainian soil. This wasn't mere posturing. Russia's leadership understands something that may not be immediately obvious. A nearly 50-year-old weapon system could fundamentally alter the strategic balance of this war. Their unique combination of range, payload, and proven reliability tips the scales by allowing Ukraine to strike deeper into Russia with devastating precision and without chances of counterattacks. This came only days after the US Vice President, J.D. Vance, confirmed in late September 2025 that the Trump administration was actively discussing Ukraine's request for Tomahawk missiles. While no final decision has been announced at the time of writing for this video, the mere possibility has sent shockwaves through the Kremlin. So let's break down why a system that had its first test flights in 1972 has Russia's leadership losing sleep, starting with the weapon specifics. The BGM-109 Tomahawk land attack missile could be called a lot of things, but outdated is not one of them. Over 2,350 Tomahawks have been fired in combat since Operation Desert Storm in 1991, and the weapon has been continuously upgraded through 5 major block improvements following decades of real-world application. The current Tomahawk variants pack a 1,000-pound highly explosive warhead and can strike targets roughly 1,000 to 1,600 miles away, depending on configuration. If we plot that in terms of distance from the Russia-Ukraine border, most of Russia's largest cities, such as St. Petersburg, will fall within the missile's operational range. According to the Institute for the Study of War, at least 1,945 Russian military objects fall within range of the 1,600-mile variant. But the raw range only tells part of the story. What makes the Tomahawk particularly feared is its guidance system, a sophisticated combination of GPS, inertial navigation, terrain contour matching, and digital scene matching area correlation. This allows the missile to fly as low as 100 feet above the ground, hugging terrain to evade radar detection. Testing and the specifics of the missile guidance systems indicate that it would have a circular error probable of just 10 meters, meaning half of all missiles will land within a 30-foot radius of their target. This increased range is directly caused by the weapon using a turbofan engine to cruise at speed of around 480 miles per hour, with lower speeds but increased fuel efficiency compared to turbojet models. In theory, it would take longer for the Tomahawk to reach its target, but the low-altitude flight path means it can go under any enemy radar, quite literally. The turbofan engine is also quieter than the traditional turbojet used for military purposes, and has lower heat signatures, making it less susceptible to tracking. These capabilities were thoroughly tested during Desert Storm in 1991, where Tomahawks were a significant part of the initial strikes, with 242 out of 290 missiles hitting their targets. Only Tomahawks and F-117 stealth fighters were deemed capable of attacking Baghdad's heavily defended targets, which were considered more formidable than any Cold War-era Eastern European defences. More recently, Tomahawk struck Iranian targets in 2025 with similar effectiveness, destroying nuclear material processing facilities and Russian defense systems around them. Perhaps most significantly, the latest versions of Tomahawks can be retargeted mid-flight. An operator can redirect the missile to any of 15 pre-programmed targets or to new GPS coordinates entirely, since the missile can theoretically connect to satellites in real time. It can even send back battle damage assessment imagery, allowing commanders to evaluate strike effectiveness in real time and adjust follow-on attacks accordingly. The latest variants of the Tomahawk also feature the Joint Multiple Effects Warhead system, which can be programmed to function against either soft targets or hardened bunkers without physically swapping the warhead. This flexibility means Ukraine wouldn't need different missile variants for different target types. It could use the same weapon against command posts, ammunition depots, or reinforced military installations. But here's where Ukraine's situation gets complicated. The Tomahawk was originally designed as a naval weapon to be launched from systems aboard ships and submarines. Ukraine, of course, has neither Tomahawk-compatible vessels nor submarines. The most viable alternative would be the US Army's Typhoon launcher system. Developed by Lockheed Martin and fielded in 2023, Typhoon is a mobile ground-based launcher built on a modified trailer platform. It uses Mk-41 vertical launch system cells, the same standard used across the US Navy, capable of firing both Tomahawks and SM-6 interceptors. It functions similarly to traditional land-based launchers, with the actual battery being modified to fire Tomahawks. Typhoon's key advantage in the war in Ukraine would also be mobility. It can be rapidly deployed, repositioned and concealed, making it significantly harder for Russian forces to target preemptively. The system can be set up and ready to fire within 15 to 20 minutes from a cold start, and its mobility means Ukrainian forces could employ shoot-and-scoot tactics, firing salvos before relocating to avoid counter-battery fire. Another similar option is the upcoming Oshkosh X-MAV, which was presented just relatively recently in October 2025, and has never actually been used by the US forces as such. The US has also been reluctant to transfer Typhoon systems to Ukraine. As of November 2025, no such transfer has been announced or appears imminent. The Oshkosh system is likely going to face similar procurement delays, given that it's practically just beginning production. Without Typhoons, Ukraine would need to develop its own ground-based launcher, a process that could take months or even years. Of course, there is precedent for adapting air-launched missiles to ground platforms. The UK previously sent Ukraine makeshift truck-mounted launchers for R-73 air-to-air missiles, essentially mounting aircraft hardpoints onto mobile vehicles. Ukraine could theoretically use a similar approach for Tomahawks, but this would require significant engineering work, testing and integration with Ukrainian command and control systems. Alternatively, Ukraine could deploy Tomahawks from its aircraft, though this presents its own challenges. Ukraine's original fleet of Su-24 Fencer tactical bombers could theoretically be modified to carry Tomahawks, similar to how they were adapted to Storm Shadow missiles. However, these Soviet-era aircraft will likely require additional integration work, and their aging airframes may not be optimal platforms for such sophisticated weapons. The arrival of F-16 fighters changed this equation somewhat. Western allies have transferred over F-16s to Ukraine as of late 2025, with more deliveries expected. These NATO standard aircraft feature hardpoints compatible with Western weapon systems, potentially streamlining Tomahawk integration, even if this hasn't been broached yet. All in all, using Tomahawks outside of their intended launchers is still largely theoretical or speculative. But there's another complication. Tomahawks rely heavily on external intelligence and targeting data for maximum effectiveness. While the missiles can operate autonomously once launched, optimal employment requires detailed pre-mission planning, including terrain mapping, target imagery, and threat assessment. This means Ukraine would need continued intelligence sharing from the United States and NATO allies. The US has specifically backed out of providing Ukraine with intelligence sharing when Russia threatened to escalate the conflict, or when Trump believed it would shorten the war. While the blockade lasted for only a few days, there's some precedent that this might be repeated, especially if Putin makes good on his promises to escalate in response to Tomahawks getting transferred to Ukraine, regardless of whether the launcher comes as well. This dependency on NATO intelligence and technology is contrasted by Ukraine's native drone industry, which has churned out multiple successful short and long-range drone models. Ukrainian manufacturers claim production capacity of up to 8 million drones annually, with a more conservative estimate of around 4 million drones across all types, given early 2025 prognoses. To understand whether Tomahawks would actually change Ukraine's strategic calculus, we need to compare them against the long-range strike systems Ukraine already possesses. Ukraine currently employs several Western-provided precision strike systems, primarily the MGM-140 ATACMS, which is also from the United States, and the Storm Shadow from the United Kingdom and France. Both have proven effective, but come with significant limitations. ATACMS missiles have a maximum range of approximately 190 miles. They're extraordinarily accurate and carry a potent 500-pound warhead, but their range constrains Ukraine to striking targets relatively close to the front lines or just inside Russian territory. Ukraine has used ATACMS effectively against ammunition depots, command posts and air defense systems, but the weapon cannot reach strategic targets deep inside Russia. Storm Shadow missiles also extend Ukraine's reach, with an operational range of around 150 miles. Unlike Tomahawks, Storm Shadows are air-launched cruise missiles, but like Tomahawks, they use terrain-following flight profiles and sophisticated guidance systems. While they have a lower range, the ability to use Su-24s to artificially extend it by approaching closer to the front can give it a few more miles, but it still increases the risk of the deploying airplane. The Tomahawk's 1,000-mile range completely changes the target set. Tomahawks launched from central Ukraine could strike air bases near Voronezh, command bunkers in Rostov-on-Don, ammunition depots throughout western Russia, and even facilities in Moscow itself. Most critically, they could threaten the Shahed drone factory in Yelabuga, Tatarstan, which has been pumping out thousands of kamikaze drones for attacks on Ukrainian cities. As mentioned, Ukraine itself has developed impressive indigenous long-range strike capabilities, particularly drone systems that can travel extraordinary distances. Throughout 2024 and 2025, Ukrainian drones struck targets over 600 miles inside Russia, including attacks on refineries, air bases, and industrial facilities. The pinnacle of these operations was Operation Spiderweb, executed in June of 2025. Ukrainian special forces smuggled approximately 120 drones into Russia using trucks, dispersing them to 5 different air bases across the country. The most distant target, the Belaya Air Base in eastern Siberia, sits nearly 2,800 miles from Ukraine's border. Once in position, the drones were activated and operated through mobile networks to conduct kamikaze strikes on parked aircraft. The operation destroyed or damaged 41 strategic bombers, including irreplaceable Tu-95 and Tu-22 M3 aircraft, representing roughly 1/5 of Russia's nuclear bomber fleet. The raid demonstrated that Ukraine could already strike targets at ranges exceeding Tomahawk's capabilities, so why would Tomahawks matter? The answer lies in sustainability and payload. Operation Spiderweb was a brilliant one-time special operation requiring months of planning, extensive infiltration, and accepting significant operational risk. Ukrainian long-range drones typically carry warheads between 100 and 150 pounds, adequate for damaging aircraft or setting fire to fuel depots, but insufficient for destroying hardened structures. Tomahawks, by contrast, could be fired repeatedly from Ukrainian soil and come preloaded with heavy warheads that can penetrate reinforced concrete and possibly destroy buried command centers. Rather than relying on covert infiltration and mobile network navigation, Ukraine could conduct mass Tomahawk strikes from secure locations, overwhelming air defenses through volume or imperceptibility. The economic calculation is also significant. While exact costs aren't publicly disclosed, estimates suggest Tomahawks cost approximately $2 million per missile. Ukraine's sophisticated long-range drones likely cost several $100,000 each, but they require extensive planning and support infrastructure for deep penetration missions. Tomahawks offer a more straightforward, if more expensive, strike option that doesn't depend on infiltration networks or covert operations. Perhaps most critically, Tomahawks would give Ukraine the ability to conduct time-sensitive strikes against fleeting targets. If Western intelligence detects a high-value target, like a mobile command post or a visiting senior officer, Ukraine could potentially launch Tomahawks within hours rather than spending weeks positioning drones for infiltration missions. Of course, there's another party in this war, and Tomahawks could wreak havoc on Russia's ability to direct the tempo and initiative in the war. Russia relies on S-400 Triumph batteries that provide area air defense and the Pantsir point defense systems to protect critical sites. If Ukraine receives Tomahawks, Russia suddenly needs to make a choice. It can maintain the current defensive positions near the front lines and occupied territories, accepting the risk of Tomahawk strikes, or it could withdraw deeper into Russia to protect vital military bases or population centers, creating gaps in coverage that Ukrainian aircraft and drones could exploit. And Ukrainian forces have already demonstrated remarkable success in degrading Russia's air defense network through sustained attacks. Military intelligence estimates suggest Russia lost approximately 24 high-value air defense radars and 17 command nodes through 2024. Multiple S-400 batteries, command posts, and even launchers have been damaged or destroyed by Ukrainian strikes using existing weapons. Russia is slowly running out of advanced options to protect itself against Tomahawk missiles, and Putin knows this, hence why the aggressive posturing to prevent the transfer. Then there are ammunition depot strikes throughout 2024 and 2025, which show that Ukraine could easily find and remove vital strategic targets. Ukraine can strike at 11 major Russian ammunition depots, with the largest reportedly containing 100,000 tons of munitions, including the specialized missiles air defense systems require. With Tomahawks, Ukraine's attacks could accelerate and gain a new level of deadliness, targeting not just ammunition storage, but also the rail networks, supply convoys, and production facilities that feed Russia's war machine. Finally, the added range is the most important part of the equation. Consider the Shahed drone factory in Yelabuga. This facility has become a crucial node in Russia's attritional warfare strategy, churning out thousands of cheap kamikaze drones for attacks on Ukrainian cities and infrastructure. Currently, it's within Ukrainian reach, but only through extraordinarily complex special operations, such as long-range drones. But a single volley of Tomahawks could also potentially devastate this facility, dramatically reducing Russia's capability to conduct close-range warfare. Then there's the oil and gas infrastructure. Russia's economy remains heavily dependent on petroleum exports despite sanctions. Ukrainian drone attacks have so far been responsible for a 20% reduction in oil processing capabilities. But the limited payload size of these drones means they need multiple drones and attacks to achieve a result. Tomahawks' substantially larger warheads would cause comprehensive damage in single strikes, potentially taking refineries offline for months rather than days. They could also target refineries and pipelines farther from the border, potentially cutting off Russia's ability to transport oil between its Far East and the refineries in the West. Given all these, the future is still uncertain how effectively Ukraine could even use the transferred Tomahawks. For one, there's no telling how many missiles the US actually plans to send to Ukraine, since the US itself is estimated to have around 4,000 of them in storage. Given that it's unclear just how efficient Tomahawk guidance and navigation systems are deeper in Russia's territory, as well as how susceptible they are to Russian defences, it's unclear if Ukraine would need 1, 2, or a dozen Tomahawks to destroy a single Russian post or military compound. This ties in directly with procurement costs, as a single Tomahawk is a much steeper investment than the single-use drones Ukraine is currently focused on producing for domestic deployment. As such, Ukraine would likely need to reconsider how it prioritizes targets. Even if it receives a few hundred Tomahawks, every shot would need to count. High-value targets like the Shahed factory, strategic air defense nodes, major ammunition depots, and critical logistic hubs would likely take precedence over softer targets that existing Ukrainian drones could handle. In theory, one of the best tactics might be to suppress Russia's air defences by using Tomahawks to destroy S-400 and similar batteries, something that is well within the capability of a single missile. Ukraine could create gaps in Russia's defence network. Follow-up strikes could then target more ammunition depots, command centres and production facilities. Finally, Ukrainian aircraft and drones could exploit the degraded air defences to conduct sustained operations in previously contested airspace. Russia would undoubtedly adapt. More mobile deployment of air defense systems, hardening of critical facilities, and increased camouflage and concealment efforts will all likely follow Ukrainian acquisition of Tomahawks. But adaptation takes time and resources, and every ruble spent hardening rear area facilities is a ruble not available for frontline operations. The strategic question becomes whether Tomahawks could fundamentally alter the war's trajectory or merely inflict additional but ultimately manageable damage on Russia's military infrastructure. The answer likely depends on factors beyond the weapon itself. How many missiles Ukraine receives, how quickly integration can be achieved, and whether follow-on supplies would be available to sustain a long-term strike campaign. But this all is underscored by the huge geopolitical can of worms that is the transfer itself. The administration of President Donald Trump's approach to the Russia-Ukraine conflict has been characterized by unpredictability, leaving both allies and adversaries uncertain about American intentions. Throughout 2025, President Trump's posture toward Russia has been considerably warmer than many NATO allies anticipated. Following unsuccessful peace negotiations with both Russia and Ukraine early in the year, the administration notably stepped back from actively pressuring Russia, instead shifting toward a more transactional approach that emphasized burden sharing with European allies. Multiple times throughout 2025, the administration threatened to reduce or eliminate military aid to Ukraine, arguing that European nations should shoulder more of the financial burden. This led to a situation where Europe became a financial, military, but also moral and geopolitical backer for Ukraine. The coalition of the willing, led by France and the United Kingdom, committed €40 billion or $46 billion in military support for 2025, effectively matching previous NATO-level commitments without American participation. Germany dramatically increased defence spending. France and the UK discuss extending their nuclear deterrence umbrella to cover other European nations, and individual countries like Romania and Denmark develop direct military procurement relationships with Ukraine. Vance's October 2025 statement that the administration is discussing Tomahawk transfers should be understood in this context. The administration hasn't committed to anything at this point and has merely acknowledged that discussions are occurring. Given Trump's pattern of using potential arms transfers as negotiating leverage, this could represent a signal to Putin rather than a genuine offer to Ukraine. Trump himself made characteristically ambiguous comments about Tomahawks. In one interview, he claimed to have asked Putin, "Would you mind if I gave a couple of thousand Tomahawks to your opposition?" before noting he did not like the idea. These statements reveal that Trump could be using the possibility of escalation as a bargaining chip while maintaining ambiguity about actual intentions. Essentially, the US administration might be having a second go at pressuring Russia into negotiations, this time using signaling of arming Ukraine rather than offering Russia a half-baked armistice proposal. However, this still leaves Ukraine in limbo, unable to plan around something that ultimately doesn't depend on them. Then there's Russia's nuclear rhetoric. Putin has repeatedly threatened nuclear responses to various escalations. NATO membership discussions, advanced weapons deliveries, strikes on Russian territory, and now potentially Tomahawk transfers. Russia's official nuclear doctrine is also unhelpfully ambiguous, allowing for nuclear weapons employment if strategic command structures or critical national infrastructure are threatened by precision weapons. Tomahawks capable of striking deep into Russia arguably meet this threshold, at least as Moscow defines it. But Russia has also cried wolf repeatedly. Similar threats accompanied HIMARS deliveries, ATACMS transfers, F-16 deployments, and authorization to strike Russian territory with Western weapons. None triggered the prophesied nuclear escalation. And there lies the critical unknown. Where exactly is Russia's actual threshold? At what point would Moscow conclude that its strategic position, where nuclear weapons use becomes a rational, if catastrophic, response? Nobody knows, including possibly Putin himself, whose decision-making has proven to be erratic throughout the conflict. As a result, the US and Ukraine must weigh this nuclear risk against the potential benefits of Tomahawk transfers. Given what Ukraine has already accomplished, it's unclear how many missiles would be enough to provide a significant advantage. It's also unclear if that number would be enough to constitute a crisis where Putin decides he does indeed want to drop a tactical nuclear weapon on one of Ukraine's cities. There's also the question of precedent. The United States has generally been cautious about proliferating its most sophisticated weapons, specifically to maintain escalation control and avoid normalizing such transfers. Providing Tomahawks, which represent an extraordinarily capable deep strike system, to Ukraine would set a precedent for transferring strategic weapons to non-allies engaged in an active conflict with nuclear powers. This will also remove any excuse preventing China from providing similarly capable systems to America's adversaries in future conflicts, or even Russia in the ongoing war. The most likely scenario isn't a clear yes or no decision, but rather extended bureaucratic processes where it might be years before Tomahawks are sent to Ukraine, which might be too little, too late, regardless of the war's outcome. The bottom line is that as long as uncertainty persists, Russia can claim to be ahead. The moment Ukraine gains credible deep strike capability at scale, Russia's entire operational calculus changes. That's what truly terrifies the Kremlin. not the specific missile that delivers that change. Thanks for watching. Now, if you want to understand how Ukraine's indigenous long-range strike programs are developing as alternatives to Western systems, check out our analysis of Ukraine's drone innovation. And to stay updated on the latest developments in the war and global geopolitics, subscribe to the Military Show for daily videos.